Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to How to Get Hired. I am Bill, the company's expert. Thank you for joining me today. You are awesome. And this is the weekly live stream I do where we talk about careers and job search. So anything you ever want to know about that stuff, that's what we're here for. And this is a Q&A. So I'm here to answer your questions. And I'm just trying to take care of some technical jiggery-pokery that comes up with these things all the time. There we go. Okay, perfect. Right on. Yes. So a shout out goes to, as always, like you guys were expecting, my YouTube channel members. Membership has its privileges. Join my channel. And also to my Patreons, to my Super Thanks donors, and to you, my participants. Thank you for being here. You are awesome. You are doing some self-improvement. That's what we're all here to do. The title of this episode is called Do This to Get Hired, live Q&A. This is episode number 128. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. There's one little tip that I have to share with you there. And then we're going to be opening it up for questions. If you have been a subscriber to my channel for any amount of time, you should be able to get into the chat. You should see a chat box somewhere in the vicinity of my face. If you are watching this on any of the various devices that we all know and love, get in the chat. Let me know what you're wondering about, what you're struggling with, and I will do my best to help you out. That's what this is all for. Okay, I think we're ready to actually get rolling on this. Okay, so the title is Do This to Get Hired. Now, this is a tip that some people know about and some people do. This is something that you are not necessarily prompted for, but you should do in job interviews because it has a very good effect. Okay, and that is to simply tell the interviewer during the course of the interview, whether this is a face-to-face interview in real life or it's a video interview over the computer, over teleconferencing, you tell them, I want the job, right? Now, on the face of this sounds stupid, it sounds icky, but it's actually really, really good, and it's very, very effective because recruiters are looking for several things when they talk to you. Job interviews are really not about your technical qualifications. That's not what they're about. Don't be fooled by the fact that they do talk about your technical qualifications quite a bit and ask you questions about it. That's what your job application was about, okay? That's what, when you send in your resume and, you fill in an online form or whatever you do, that's what that is about. It's about your technical qualifications on paper. Now that you're in the interview, the whole point of having an interview is that they want to see what you're like as a person, okay? That's what the job interview is all about. And so they're looking for several things that are not on your resume. They're looking for things like, everybody loves that. Are you a fit? Right? Everyone loves that term. That means that if we hired you and put you into this role, are you likely to work out or are you unlikely to work out? That's what basically that means. And that incorporates several different things. One of the things in there, one of the criterion is that you actually want to do this type of work. Like, everybody is looking for the paycheck, but aside from the paycheck, do you actually care about doing this type of work? Would you actually want to do this job instead of other jobs that you could get, right? That's what they're checking for. So they want to hire someone who not only is qualified, but also wants to do this particular work and wants to work here. That's the idea. They're passionate, right? That's one of the things that they're checking for. Now, rightly or wrongly, that matters a lot to them. So when you go to a job interview and you independently tell them, listen, I want this job, that's very powerful, okay? Now, let's get into this. They often ask a standard job interview question that goes along the lines of, why do you want this job, right? That's one of these standard job interview questions. It's a question that can be phrased a bunch of different ways. They could say, why do you want to work here? Okay. It's the same question because what you basically do, the conventional wisdom is that you answer by listing your strengths, the things that they said they were looking for. So if the job description said we're looking for someone who's got this education, these skills, this experience, right? When they ask you, why do you want to work here? You say like, well, as I understand it, you're looking for someone who has this experience, these skills, and this education, and I have those, so it seems like a perfect fit, right? When they ask you that type of question, why do you want this job? So that's the proper way to answer that question, because you're speaking to things that they're actively looking for, rather than saying a random thing and hoping that they're looking for it, right? They're looking for this stuff because they said we're looking for these things, right? So that's how you answer that question. But independently, during the job interview, you tell them, I want this job. And you can tack that onto the end of your answer when they ask you, why do you want this job? Okay, that's a logical place to include that if you're wondering when in the interview I'm supposed to say this, right? They say, why do you want to work here? Why do you want this job? Why should we hire you? It's all the same question. You answer the question, give them all the reasons they should hire you. You're a perfect fit. And then you say, listen, and I want you to know something. I want this job. And if they say, oh, how so? Or why is that? Then you have permission to go and explain why you want the job. And what I think is a good answer is to explain how your skills fit with what they're looking for, right? Now, I did a video many years ago. It was reasonably successful where I talked about this, and I told a story of from my past, which is now like 15 years in the past, something like that. It's quite a while ago now. But I was being interviewed for a job, and I went to, this was in Toronto, actually, and they flew me out to Toronto, and I was in this restaurant, and I was talking to the CEO, that was the hiring manager for this job, and I can't really remember much about the conversation. It was kind of ho-hum type conversation, but what I said to them was, I said, listen, I want to tell you something important, and I want to make sure you're listening. Are you listening? And they said, yes, yeah, I'm listening. I said, okay, I want this job. And then I backed it up, and I said, the cool thing about this job, this role, is that it requires strengths in 3 different areas. And I have strengths in those 3 areas. I've worked in all 3 areas, and it's not very often that you get a role come along where you can apply, where in my case, I can apply my knowledge and experience from 3 of these disparate areas all in the same role. That's pretty rare, and that's why I'm very excited about this, because this requires, knowledge of this area, knowledge of this area, knowledge of that, and that's very exciting to me because I have all these skills in these areas. I get to apply them here. This is great, so I want this job. So I said something along those lines. I can't remember my exact words, this is in the past, but I ended up getting the job. And the thing that was notable was that I was up against some pretty stiff competition. The thing that I didn't really have to speak of was hard sales experience. They were talking to people that had like lots and lots of sales experience. I didn't. I had some involvement in that kind of thing, but it really wasn't my bag. It wasn't my core competency. So I felt that like, I'm probably not going to get this, but they offered it to me, and I got it. And I felt that it was like that element in the interview with the CEO that really did it for me. So that's kind of why I say this. This can be a magic bullet, and I've heard other people mention this too. So I highly recommend that you do it. See if you can weave that into the interview. The logical place is when they ask you that standard job interview question, why do you want to work here? / why do you want to work for us? / why do you want this job? That question where you talk about your strengths, and then end by saying this. And that will really make a strong impression of them. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys. Yeah, hopefully you can use that. let's open it up to questions. I see there's 29 people. Thank you for joining me. You guys are awesome. We're doing some self-improvement. This is a Q&A, so get in the chat box. Let me know what you're wondering, and I will do my best to help you out. BB Darrow CR says, greetings from Costa Rica. Costa Rica, that's like San Jose, right? Greetings from Canada. Thank you for being here. Let me know if you got a question there, BB Darrow, Costa Rica, right? Maybe you could tell me something I don't know. All those Latin American countries, I believe Spanish is the sort of language of each one, if I'm not mistaken. I know that, like in Brazil, it's Portuguese, right? And pretty much almost the entire rest of South America, it's all Spanish, right? But are there different dialects between the different countries when you speak Spanish in those countries? I'm just curious. You let me know. But I'm here to answer questions. And Drusla15 is here, says, hello, Joe. So welcome to Drusla15. BB Darrow CR says, I have, yes. Okay, right on. Awesome. Senior systems engineer, already done 4 interviews. Okay, cool. Deep Anshu says, hello, can I ask you a question related to my Amazon interview? Sure, you can ask. I don't have any particular specialty insider information on Amazon, but yeah, I can. You can certainly ask. BB says, then I follow up with the last interviews. We speak Spanish natively and somehow speak good English. English. Awesome. What are some questions to probe if I'm a technical fit for a role? Okay, here's what I want to show you. Okay, let's you and me learn together, because as I said, I don't have any specialty knowledge of Amazon. Let's try this here. Okay, I have a job interview with Amazon coming up. I'm going to make this bigger. Okay. What are some questions to probe if I'm a technical fit? What are some questions they may ask to probe to see if I am a technical, you like my spelling, technical fit for the role? What role, by the way? That would be kind of useful to know. Okay, so you can do this kind of thing yourself and just see what it comes up with. Because as I said a couple of times, I don't have any specific knowledge of Amazon. I've never worked for Amazon myself. Depends heavily on the specific role. Well, there you go. Okay, so but you can do this yourself. Now, if you're applying for a software development role, data structures, blah, 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 testing. Okay, so you can do this kind of thing and come up with something. Here's what I would say, okay? First of all, every organization has their own version of what you're asking. You see, they ask standard job interview questions, right? There's about 10 of those, right? You can easily find them on the net, do a Google search or a ChatGPT search or whatever your tool of choice is. You can easily find those. Those are not about your technical background, really. They're about your motivations and your situation and, what, your history is with regard to compensation and like all that kind of stuff, right? For the technical stuff, that exists in some areas where the company is mistrustful of educational certifications, and they want to sort of verify your technical skills by giving you skill testing questions and things like that. Usually that's for lower level stuff, right? So I don't know if you said what what your role was. Did you say that? No, you didn't say that. So that's something you might have to search online. I don't know about Amazon specifically and what their tests are for different technical roles. Like it said there, you're going to need to adapt it to the role, right? Okay. If you're talking to a hiring manager, I don't know if Amazon makes you talk to hiring managers on your first round, if that's their official process or not. Probably not. But if you do get to talk to a hiring manager, they're the ones talking shop, and they can usually tell in a conversation with in about a minute and a half if you know your stuff or not, just by asking you general questions about doing that kind of work. Okay? Usually they don't leave it to a recruiter unless it's like some kind of questionnaire or test, and you might be able to find those online. There might be reviews, people share how the interview went, especially for something as prominent as Amazon. Tong says, "Hey Bill, hope you're doing well." Yeah, I am actually. Last week I got invited to a company's assessment day. This was a stage after an interview where they invited all the candidates to their office who passed the interview to complete some group assessments, and they picked 15 out of 24 people who attended this to be employed. They called me after the day to say they placed me as their reserve. If someone dropped out, they would call me. Ooh, that's a vote of confidence, right? Congratulations, we didn't pick you, but if one of the people we did pick drops out, then we'd like to, I guess, call you. That's always complimentary, isn't it? Makes you feel like that tall. I guess it's better than a hard no, but doesn't exactly inspire you with confidence. Today they emailed me that I was not hired and this decision was final. I asked for feedback and they said I didn't engage as confidently as their candidates. Tong, should I read something into this or there is nothing I could do differently? Tong, it's not possible to say with one data point. Okay? That's like saying, okay, I'm young, I'm single, I'm a guy, I'm into girls. I saw a very pretty girl over there. I went up to talk to her. I said hi, and she said, "Get the hell out of here." Right? Now, the question I have for you is, should I kill myself, or should I maybe talk to another girl at some point in my life? Right? It's kind of like saying that. Like, you can't tell. Maybe there was something you did wrong, or maybe this person was just a complete idiot. There's no way to know with just one data point. So playing the odds, you're probably not doing anything wrong in absolute terms. There's no way to know for sure, but just with one encounter or one experience or one rejection like this, there's no way to know, okay? Now, if you go to, I would say, 5 interviews and you get rejected by all of them, like one after another, and you suspect that maybe you're doing something that's kind of off-putting, that's blowing the interview for you. Maybe you're not, you don't have the right body language, or you're not following the right etiquette, or when you speak or respond to them, you're giving off body language that suggests that you're not the one in some way. You're not confident, or whatever these people are saying. The way you work on that, okay, is you get feedback independently yourself, okay? The cheapest and most straightforward thing you can do is to do pretend interviews, mock interviews with a friend or family member, okay? Where they pretend to be the interviewer and you're the candidate, and you do it like it's a real interview. It's like a rehearsal for when you go and do a job interview. And this is good for you in many ways, but a fringe benefit of it is that you could ask them and say, like, listen, give it to me straight. What's your opinion? Is there something that I'm doing that I could be doing better, in your opinion? Now, if you trust this person, right, then you can maybe go off that. But it's something very cheap and quick and easy to do to get some feedback. Now, if you want to do this a little more properly, the next step up is to do that same thing with a career coach, okay? I'm not a career coach. I don't offer those services. That's not me we're talking about here. But, like you maybe book one interview with a career coach. You could do it online, right? Like a one hour interview. And what they'll do is they'll do like a mock interview with you, like a pretend job interview. And at the end of it, they will give you feedback. They'll say, listen, here's my objective feedback for you based on, being a professional recruiter or whoever this person is. This is what I'd say. and they can give you some pointers. And the difference is that they're working with you, that you're paying these people to help you, right? And that's what they do. They help people and get them hired, right? So if you want to level up and like spend a little bit of money, we're talking like, I don't know, $50 or something, you can get that. And that's the way to get feedback. You can't get feedback from recruiters that you're interviewing for a job because, number one, they never give feedback. Like, companies in the United States have been sued for giving feedback, saying you weren't hired because of this, and then that person turns around, sues the company, and say you can't do that, you can't evaluate people on that, or whatever it is, right? There's various reasons, big reasons why they don't give feedback, or if they do give feedback, it's false, or they're certainly not telling you the whole story. They may be giving you some trivial feedback, but they're not really disclosing the actual thing that they used to reject you for, right? So that's why you got to take any of this kind of stuff with a grain of salt, okay? Move on, and if you suspect that there is something wrong you're doing because, you keep getting rejected and it always seems to get to the same stage and then bam, it just fails, that would be how I'd recommend you try and zero in on the problem and address it. Okay? Does that make sense, Tom? Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, where are we here? There's quite a bit here. Let's see. Christian says, hello, Bill. I did a job interview yesterday. To be honest, TBH, don't use acronyms with me, okay? Because I'm talking to people all over the world in every industry. Yeah, I can't. I know this is like an internet acronym, but try to minimize those two. Felt I did solid, but did get nervous at times answering questions. Well, congratulations, Christian. You're absolutely normal. You're going to be nervous to varying degrees. The more rehearsed you are, the more mock interviews you've done before, the more you're, first of all, going to knock it out of the park. Secondly, the more confident you're going to be. But you will never be 100% at ease. You're always going to be nervous to a small degree. You're always going to be out of your comfort zone, out of your turf. That's just how it goes, but it comes with experience. Okay, BB says, this is my question. I got this email. Okay. My name is X. I am a senior recruiter at a company. I believe you spoke with a recruiter in the past regarding the role. Name requested that I reach out to you to see if you are still interested in this thing. So why did I got this if I demonstrate already that I was interested? Listen, BB, here's what I can tell you. Okay, if you haven't already experienced this, you're going to experience it. Unfortunately, at kind of the worker level or whatever, or around the low level stuff, recruiters tend to be amateur. They tend to be borderline incompetent as a group. Like, there are some really good ones, but there's also a lot of really bad ones, right? They also tend to be overworked on their end, okay? They take all kinds of shortcuts just to get things done. And anyway, I'm not going to get into all the reasons why, but just you get stuff that is poorly presented, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, and you don't really, there's a lot of questions surrounding it like this, okay? If all they want to do is talk to you, fine, you talk to them. If they want you to apply for something and you feel it's worth your time and effort because you want that job or whatever, apply for it. You know what I'm saying? If they're wanting something weird, they're wanting your banking information, they're wanting like all kinds of confidential stuff, that's probably not good. That's probably self-evident. But if they want to talk to you and you're looking for that job, it's something you'd consider, what's the harm? Just pursue it, right up to the point where there's like a real red flag with it. You know what I mean? That's what I would say. Don't look for logic. You're never going to be able to figure out what's going on their end. Okay. You don't know where they're coming from. You don't know what they're looking for. All you know is what they say. And a lot of times what they say is always going to be incomplete, sometimes nonsensical, sometimes contradictory, just there's a chance there can be a good job behind a poor gatekeeper. Okay. So sometimes you get that, So you can pursue it, as long as there's no red flags, if you feel so inclined. We're not going to be able to understand exactly what their situation is and their motivations for contacting you and what they're specifically looking for. We can't discern any of that, and you're going to go insane trying to figure it out, okay? Because it's just not worth doing. Take your time and your effort and put it into pursuing opportunities and creating opportunities for yourself, okay? If this person wants to talk to you, sure, whatever. I got time to talk to you, but I'm not going to lose any sleep or stress out about it or worry about it or, whatever, okay? That's, in my opinion, the attitude you should have as you go through this process. Okay, now I skipped over, is it Deepanshu says, I gave an interview for an L5 role last week. The interview joined the call and told me that he is coming out of a tough meeting with his manager. I've offered him to have a break, which he denied. We didn't have any formal introduction. Like all this, stuff that it's just unprofessional to share with people. So no questions like why Amazon or why this role. Instead, he started asking me internal process questions that are used at Amazon, to which I told him that I don't have insider info, but he didn't stop. The interview ended after 2 days. I got a decline. I shared this issue with the recruiter and marked his seniors. Jeff Bezos and Andy Jassy, who told me that they would get back to me with an update. They replied that he removed that person who took my interview from the panel as an... Before we go any further, Deepanshu, it sounds completely amateur. Just so you know, it's unprofessional, it's amateur. That's not how you interact with people outside your company. It's not how you represent your company well, okay? So whoever this person is, they're not doing this right. Maybe they're too cool to do it right, or they're too cool to be polite, or they're too cool to do things properly, or they're too important in their own mind to do it right, or to treat you properly, or to explain themselves. They're expecting you to be a mind reader, and they really don't seem like they're that into you. You know what I mean? Already. That's the vibe I'm getting. So, if this was a higher level person, like a mid-level manager, then they should know better than to act like this. They're making a very bad job. If this is someone lower than that, it could be just they don't know any better. They don't know how to interact with people properly. They were never taught that. So you give them the benefit of the doubt because, they could be, their intentions could be good, but they just don't know how to interact with people or handle this kind of interaction properly. Okay, answer about the next steps and what will happen to my candidacy. What shall I do? I'm asking you, as far as I know, Amazon is having a 6-month cooling period. Look, Deepanshu, this thing that you're describing, this depends on them, right? Like people wonder, okay, what can I do to make this work out? And they think that they have a lot of influence over the situation, the outcome, and the process, like how it goes for them. And you don't. This person has all the, for want of a better word, power. They control the conversation. They control the interaction. They're telling you what they're looking for or what their process is. It doesn't sound very forthcoming. It sounds like a bureaucratic mess with people who are not really interested. That's what it sounds like. I'll be honest, that's what it sounds like. And quite frankly, listen, the same thing applies that I told to Tong, if they want to talk to you, sure, I'll give you some time, but I'm moving forward. I'm not interested in trying to reverse engineer this. You guys figure it out, decide if you want to talk to me or not. And if you do, I'm here. If you need me to do something, ask me and tell me what it is very clearly. I'll be happy to do it. Other than that, I'm moving on. So, that's the only way to really handle it. Your control over this situation is very limited, okay? The only thing you have control over is yourself. So when they respond to you Okay? If you do know this person's phone number, the best thing to do is to call them and not do all this over email, but to actually call them and have a conversation. Okay? If you're the type of person that's like absolutely afraid of picking up a phone, maybe make the effort, maybe call after hours and leave a voicemail or something. You know what I mean? But it doesn't sound very promising. It sounds like a bunch of arrogant people that are kind of also incompetent. They're certainly not following etiquette. You know, when you are contacting people outside the company, they're being very condescending and disrespectful. So it's not a good start. Okay, so what shall I do? Just simply, if they want to talk to you, you talk to them. If they don't make it clear what you should do, you know, then you move forward with something else that looks more promising than this. Tong says, thanks for the advice. Actually, this wasn't an interview. It was doing an icebreaker where you had to introduce a stranger to the room and then do a project with other applicants. It felt unusual. Yeah, it sounds like a silly, you know, kind of let's all get together and get to know each other type corporate crap. That's what it sounds like. Listen, if they're interested in hiring you, then they should hire you instead of giving you these stupid team building exercise imitation, you know? You know, I don't know, because I wasn't there. What do I know? And I don't know the company very well, but it just from what you've described, it just seems pretty lame. You know what I mean? These people are arrogant. They don't understand business because they're a tiny cog in a big machine. They don't really understand people or, you know, how to do things right. And what's the effect? You're confused. You don't feel very welcomed. Yeah, it's not working. You know what I mean? That's how it seems. Go and talk to people that actually, are interested in your skills and see your value. You know, if this works out, and I hope it does. If it works out, great. You know, if they're clear about what you can do, great. You know. Anyway, okay, so everybody's telling these big long stories, and it's all mixed all together. I'm trying to keep it separate in my mind here. Bahadur says, remember I asked whether to email after being rejected when they reposted the job. I did, and they ended up giving me the offer. Thanks for your support. Okay, right on. Congratulations. That's an exception rather than a rule, but I'm glad that it worked out for you. Bahadur says, I was rejected a month after my first interview, but 2 months later they reposted the same position, and this time I got the offer. Right on. That's a sign of a company that really knows what it's doing. They post the job, reject you. They post it again, hire you. You see, this is what I'm talking about, HR, you know? It's like, that was efficient. After 8 months, I finally did it. Well, congratulations, Bahadur. I'm glad that worked out for you, and I wish you every success in your role. You know, you see, you were valuable, you were hireable all along, and that's the same thing that applies to everybody who is between jobs. Amir says, what will you advise to a candidate that has a good experience and skills but not able to conduct an impressive interview? You're not able to conduct, you mean like when they interview you don't do very well? Is that what you're saying? Well, it's pretty simple, Amir. What I would say is, first of all, I'm making the assumption that you are between jobs and you are looking for a job and you are engaged in pursuing that by applying to posted job positions online. Those are assumptions I'm making. Now, if those are all true, I would say if you know that you don't do a very good interview and you don't make a very good first impression on people, if I were you, I would learn to fix that. It's not as hard as you think. It's just, learning what needs to be done and then practicing. It's like anything else in life, you know? You can learn how to talk to people. You can learn how to present yourself so you come across professionally. You come across with a lot of charisma, right? Just learn the basics of those things, like how to, first of all, your attire and your grooming, so you visually look good. your body language. You learn the basics of body language. If you come in and you kind of are all hunched and you look like this, and they ask you questions and you look like kind of bored, or you look like angry at people. I've had people that like, they interview me like this, they like talk to me like this, it's like, chill out. It's okay. I know you're not upset, but like, you're really coming across as like really intense. So just learn the basics of that. Then once you open your mouth, okay, learn what to say, right? By learning about like how to answer job interview questions. That's kind of the starting point. Learn about how to speak properly so that people can hear you. And it's a 2-part process. One is you learn the theory of how it's done. And the second part is then you go and practice, right? It's like anything else. You want to learn a musical instrument. That's what you do. You learn, okay, here's how you play the song on this instrument, right? Like these are the notes and this is how you read music, right? And then you practice, right? You're not just going to instantly know how to do the song without practicing. So this is no different. It's like anything else. You want to learn a sport or get good at the sport? Exactly the same process. Learn the theory of how to do it and then go out and practice. So it's not that hard for like 99.9% of people. Like unless you have like a medical disability, like that's like, that's something wrong with your brain that's preventing you. It's like a medically diagnosed thing. Anyone else can learn if you follow that process. The problem is a lot of people, they don't want to practice and they don't want to learn the theory, but then they wonder why they're not improving. And then they say, oh, I'm just not good at this. That's just who I am. It's like wrong. It's like saying, I'm just the type of person that doesn't play the piano. That's who I am. And I'll never change, As much as I want to play the piano, I'm just a person who doesn't play piano, who will never play piano, who will never know how to play piano. That's what I stand for. It's like, it's a silly thing to say, because if you want to play piano, there are ways to learn. It's not that hard, but you need to be taught. You need to have someone who knows how to play piano to tell you. Anyway, hopefully you get that, right? I can go on forever. That's my problem. But hopefully that was somewhat useful. Amir, you're awesome. You can do this. You can learn how to go to a job interview and really impress people. They say, of all the people we talked to, we spoke to 6 people and we talked to another 6 online, like over a Zoom call. They're all qualified, but you know what? We pick Amir because we want to work with him or her. You know what I'm saying? That's who we pick. That's going to be you if you embrace this, okay? BB says, thanks, you really helped me on the last interview with the big cheeses. Okay, good. Who's the sports team? There's a sports team in, I think it's the United States. They have like is it the cheese heads or whatever? They all wear the cheese on their heads and they go to a stadium, a game of some kind, right? They got the foam finger and they got the cheese on their head and, anyway, that's what I'm picturing. Jeff Bezos wearing one of those. Deepanshu says, thank you for taking my question and for your valuable feedback. You're absolutely welcome, Deepanshu. That's what I'm here to do. And you're not alone. You're going to be okay. It's like getting a job is like a skill like any other. You learn how it's done, you practice it, and then you do it. You know what I mean? And you're gonna be fine. You're already here doing self-improvement, so you're gonna be fine. It's a temporary thing. Mr. Bobilly. It depends on if it's the European pronunciation or the continental pronunciation. I prefer the continental pronunciation. It says, just wondering from your experience, do you continue filling job applications that asks for your social security number before you even get an interview, considering that many scams going on? I'm not sure. Like, I'm not in the United States, so I don't have a social security number, so I wouldn't know. I'm not sure what the social security number reveals. Like, does that mean they can look up, I don't know, your tax history or your credit history or like I don't know. Unfortunately, that's a USA specific question, so unfortunately, I can't answer. Job applications ask for your social security numbers, so sketchy, illegally, might not even get an interview. You don't know what these are. Yeah, like it's always weird. It is a red flag if they're asking for something very personal or confidential right up front. You know what I'm saying? Like that is a red flag. Okay. Now, it may be okay to give them what they're asking for, but later on, like for example, if you have sent in an application, they receive it, they bring you in for an interview, they bring you in for a second interview, then they say, okay, we'd like you to submit some references. We'd like some, permission from you to contact previous employers. We'd like your social security number. We'd like a couple other things, like stuff that's within reason. Then it's fine maybe at that point, right? But when they're asking for like that kind of stuff right up front, we want to know all your references right up front. That's kind of weird too. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times I think people end up giving them that because people are stubbornly laboring under this false belief that there aren't that many jobs and this is one of the few jobs that's out there that I could get. So I don't want to end this opportunity and pass it up, so I better give them what they want. Right? That's false. Okay? All the jobs that you see in the posted job market, if you didn't know, those are 20% of all the jobs that are actually out there that you could get. The others are just not posted publicly. The other 80%, they tend to be better jobs too, right? But you don't get them by searching for them on the internet, okay? You get them by some form of networking. The most obvious one is to reach out to employers that are around you, okay? I always have to get this in because this is something that so many job seekers, especially the ones that are starting out, they don't know, and it's hurting them. You have a lot more options than simply the jobs you see posted, okay? There are a lot more jobs. People get hired every day for jobs that are never posted. If you want to know what it kind of looks like, okay, I have a video on my channel where I show you what that looks like. It's linked in the description box under this live stream. It's called How Successful People Get Jobs. Check that out, okay? Hopefully that might open your mind to the hidden job market and all the stuff that's there, which you really should be pursuing too. There's a lot of good stuff there that you can get. It's just that nobody's directing you towards it, right? I think I covered everyone's thing right up to Weir Whiskey. Weir Whiskey says, I personally avoid putting my social security number in any job app. The data harvesting, yeah, it could be that. That makes sense. Putting some random code. I also mentioned I don't know if I'd put in some random code, but I don't know. I don't know what they do with it. Yeah, like the point is that there's a lot more opportunities out there than this stuff. You should never have to give like confidential personal information that you're not comfortable handing over to people to get a job. There's quite a lot out there if you know where to look. Okay, we've reached the end of the chat here, so there's 34 people here. If you're looking to get a job, check that out. That's my Get Hired course. I put all my advice in one place. That'll tell you how to get hired in the posted job market and also how to get hired in the hidden job market. So check that out. There's a link in the description box to that course, and I've also made videos that describe the course so you know exactly what it's about, what you get, how it works, so it's as transparent as possible. So there you go. Check that out. If you are also looking to improve your communication skills, you can check that out. In that course, I put everything I learned about communication skills, going from a supervisor eventually all the way up to a CEO. So that's where I put all that stuff. Like I always say, there's many things you have to tack on apart from technical skills when you climb the ladder. One of them is communication skills. That's that. You also have to tack on people management skills, financial skills. There's a bunch of others. But all the communication stuff is all here. It's called Write Like a Professional, but it is about writing, but it's also about what to say in different situations, what to communicate. That's where the value is. So check that out if that's the kind of thing you're looking for. Very popular course. A lot of people have taken it. I've got some great feedback on it. Yeah. So the thing is, generally speaking, like it depends on your kind of style of doing this. We're Risky is giving their kind of, the way they handle it, and that's fine. For me, I wouldn't like sort of debate it with them. If that's what they need, I would just see if it's optional. And if it's optional, I just wouldn't give it to them. But I wouldn't like sort of take them to task about it. Because usually, I mean, not always, but usually that kind of is a turnoff for them. And this whole process is we're trying to impress them. We're trying to make them pick us rather than pick somebody else. So usually telling people you don't want to do the thing they want you to do is not a great way of getting in their good books. You can ask them questions like We're Whiskey is saying. You can ask them, is it okay if I do this? And they say, sure. You're like, okay, that's good. But just make sure you're not sort of like arguing with them about stuff. Because if that's what you're going to do, then it's almost pointless from that point on to persist. Get in the chat. Let me know what your questions are. I'm here to answer questions. There are 34 people here. Thank you for joining me, but I need questions to go on. So if you're wondering anything in particular about job search or careers, get in the chat box and let me know. And I will do my best to help you out. Just adjusting my camera brightness. I'm here in my office and it's another partly cloudy day. So it gets bright, and it gets dark, and it gets bright, and it gets dark, and I have to keep adjusting my cameras because you would think I would have the technology to do like an auto brightness thing, but no, I don't. So, and that's because I built I'm sure nobody cares about this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. I built my channel with the equipment that I had. I have a computer that I built from the components like in 2010, and that's what I'm using. That's what I'm using to this day. And it is obsolete. It's running Windows 10, but it can't be upgraded. And I'm running Streamlabs OBS to do the live stream, and I've had a lot of problems with their solution. For example, I used to live stream like this. Where, over here in this black part of the screen there, you could see all your comments and stuff going by and what I was responding to, but they've broken that functionality in their own product, so I can't use it. And in this screen, that was here, that blue box, right? That's what the blue box is for. You could see your comment feed going by, and that's what I'm responding to. But they got rid of that. They suddenly just broke the functionality one day, and here we are. So I'm just hobbling on. So I got to 500,000 subscribers for what that's worth with just using the equipment that I had. Now I'm going to actually upgrade what I'm doing in the next year or so. That's my intention anyway. We'll see where it goes. Okay, we got some questions here. So Deepanshu says, do you have any suggestions to improve the communication skills during the interviews? I see that you have shared a link in your channel link. Okay, I don't know what you mean by channel link, but I've shared, there's some links like in the description box under this live stream if you're watching this on the desktop or on mobile or mobile to our American cousins. As far as improving communication skills, yeah, like learn the theory, okay? Now, it depends what you're willing to do to learn the theory. If you have access to ChatGPT, you use things like ChatGPT, just ask it. And I'm sure it can give you the basics of that stuff. It's like, how do I improve my communication skills in a job interview? How do I make a better first impression or a good first impression in a job interview. When it comes to what I say, what are some pointers? When it comes to how I say it, whether it's my posture or my body language or, like how I look at people, do I look them in the eye or do I look down? What do you recommend? What's the most effective? You can start asking it questions like this. If you're that type of person that's using tools like that, that's really a good way to start. Once you pick up the basics of the theory, then what I'd recommend is you go and you start putting those into practice, right? Now, for example, if it's talking about eye contact and it's talking about like your tone of voice, like speaking, kind of loud enough for people to hear you so you appear confident, things like that. That's something you can put into practice now, when you just talk to anybody. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be in a job interview to practice doing that, right? So, start practicing. If it's things that you can only do in a job interview, then do mock interviews. Get friends and family members to do mock interviews and practice it. Then the next time you go to a job interview, then make it a point to try and do those things, right? So that's kind of the process. There's no real magic. Just learn the theory. You could learn it from the internet. You could learn it from ChatGPT. You could buy different people's courses. I don't really teach that kind of stuff, especially. But there's like a lot of resources out there and videos, articles, masterclass things. There's all kinds of things out there. Just pick it up and then put it into practice. And then you practice enough, you'll get good. If you don't know whose advice to buy, like, different people are saying different things. What I do is I would go back to like an academic type source, right? So I don't know where in university they teach like public speaking, but I'm sure it might be part of business. It might be part of other programs, do a search for that and then like get like a textbook on it to learn the theory. It's peer reviewed. It's taught like all over the world or whatever. You can get these textbooks off Amazon for like $5, and like that would be a good start. If you don't know, should you pick up a coffee table book or should you go on ChatGPT? I would trust things like ChatGPT more than I trust a coffee table book. There's a lot of misinformation that I've seen personally. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, in coffee table books. And you know what I mean? It's just somebody's made up thing that, is what they're saying to do. You have no idea if that's actually effective or not. You know what I mean? So peer-reviewed things are a good start, and then just practice. Okay, We're Whiskey. How do you best explain or cover a 2-year employment gap that is due to a combo of tending to family and mental health reasons? Can framing your hobbies projects as freelance work, asking for a friend? Okay, listen very carefully, We're Whiskey. There's a lot to unpack here. I'm going to summarize it for you. Do not mention freelance work if you are trying to get a permanent job. Okay? If you're interviewing to get freelance work somewhere, like it's like a contract role or something, fair enough. But if you're trying to become like a permanent employee, and that's what you're here to interview for, don't mention freelance work. Don't mention anything on the side. Okay? Because they will get the impression, you've got things going on the side. Or you have potential to have things going on the side because you've done it before. Okay. No, thank you. Right? We're going with somebody else. Right? Because they don't like that. You and I both know that freelance work and things like that is awesome. Okay? It says a lot about you. You're the type of person that can do that. You probably have some incredible skills. But that's not going to impress them because they are the opposite of freelance work. They do not want you doing freelance work when you're working for them. They want you to be dependent on them. They want you to be entirely focused on them, available at their beck and call, and they want to be scared. They want you to be scared of losing your job with them so that you work really hard, right? Okay, so don't mention freelance work. Do not mention mental health. Okay, like if you had mental health issues, if you did, that's fine. That's a real thing. You know, it needs to be addressed and everything. But don't talk about it in a job interview, because once again, they will come away thinking, okay, you're a person that has had mental health issues. That makes you riskier as a choice if we pick you. You know, what's to say you don't have mental health issues now, for all we know? We don't know. So, you know what I mean? So just don't mention that. It'll make a bad impression. I'm sure it was the reason, and I'm sure, you know, it all makes sense what you're saying, and it's all true. But it won't be regarded as a good thing, okay? Unfortunately. Okay? If you have a current employment gap, meaning that the last job you had was like over 2 years ago, so you have a 2-year work gap, okay? The only real thing that I know of that is somewhat effective at explaining it away to a recruiter is to say that it wasn't really a gap, you went back to school. Okay, it was a gap in your employment because you went back to school. It was a conscious decision. Okay, you weren't let go. It wasn't unplanned. Because the problem with the work gap is the way recruiters think is that if you were out of work for 2 years, maybe there's a reason for that you're not telling us. We don't know. Like, oh yeah, sure, you say it's because of this. But how do we know? We don't know that that's the truth. There could be a real underlying issue. All we know is that other people weren't hiring you. You know, maybe there's a reason for that, right? This is how these people think. This is how they're taught to think. I know this because I used to teach recruiters in university. You know, it's recruitment theory. They're not looking for the best candidate. They're looking for the least risky candidate. And all of these things make you a riskier candidate in their eyes, okay? So the only thing I know of that you can really say is you say like, look, you know, it was a conscious decision. I wanted to update my skills. I want to go back, take some classes, take some courses, and I did. And now that I've updated my skills on this, and this, now I'm ready to rejoin the workforce, you know? And just to make sure that that's not a total lie, go out right now, go register for some free classes somewhere, just so you can say honestly, legitimately, I've taken classes or courses in this and this and this, you know, and that's what I've brushed up my skills on. And now I'm here because it's time to get back to work, right? You know, and that diffuses a lot of the risk. They go, okay, it was planned. It makes sense. You're adding value. Okay. Now you're ready. You're following a plan. There's no red flags anywhere in there. The sick family member thing, like, listen, there's always exceptions, right? You know, everything happens some of the time, but generally speaking, the problem with that is that if you had a sick family member before, you can have a sick family member again. And that also means you're a riskier candidate, right? It's stupid, but these are the assumptions they make. That's what recruiters do. They make assumptions based on stereotypes because they're trying to get to know you without actually getting to know you and putting the time in, right? So the only thing they can do is they can play the odds for all these things. And the odds are that people who have long work gaps, they have a higher likelihood of having another long work gap, statistically. Does that mean that applies to you? No, of course not. But that's what they're going off. Hopefully that makes sense. Deepanshu says, my Write Like a Professional course. Okay, now that was for, I see they have shared a link in your channel link. Yeah, like are you talking about the description box below? Yes, there's a link to my courses there. I was just talking about it. So yes. Like it says right here on the bottom of the screen, right under the orange icon, it says all links in description box below. So yes. This one, okay, which one are we talking about? I see that you have a link shared in your channel. Do you have any suggestions to improve the communication skills? Okay, the Write Like a Professional course is not about job interviews, okay? It's about sort of improving your communication skills in general so that people will be impressed. They'll regard you as someone that should be promoted. You could do the job at a higher level, okay? Because one thing you need to move up the ladder and get positions of increasing responsibility is one of the things you need is good communication skills, okay? And so that's what that course develops for you. It's not about job interviews, really. Okay, this one is about job interviews. That one is about like your career and being seen as someone who should be moved upwards, that kind of thing. Does that make sense? Weir Whiskey says 2-year gap post-graduation. Listen, there's something called a current work gap. That means a work gap right now. You've been out of work for a while. Your last job was a while ago, maybe 2 years ago, right? That's what a current work gap is. If it's a previous work gap, like you got a job and then you left the job, there was a gap of 2 years, and then you got another job after the end of that 2-year absence, and then now you've left the job and you're looking for another job now. So there isn't a current work gap. That's different. Recruiters don't really care too much, generally speaking, about previous work gaps. They only really care about a current work gap. Okay, that's when it becomes a problem. Weir Whiskey is talking about something. I don't know what the context is. How do you best explain employment gap, combo, family, asking for a friend, and said hobbies, projects were legitimate, worked upon for beyond those 2 years, so technically one. If you guys could ask like shorter questions, I'd appreciate that too. Questions that go on over multiple posts, like, different paragraphs. It's getting hard when everybody's like talking at once. So it really helps your cause if you could just ask a compact question. Martin Dins. Is that Dins? No, that's Denise. Mardin. Denis says, "Hi there. I am foreigner, relocated to the U.S. legally. I on the cybersecurity field, but is really difficult to enter the American market. I'm trying to tech support positions, but I can't land any job. Any tips to restart a career here?" Well, it sounds like you need a job. Learn how to get a job. What part of that are you asking about? I can't explain the entire thing from scratch. All I can say is that, having skills is a completely different thing from knowing how to get hired, right? Some people, they make the mistake of thinking like, oh, I'm qualified for like several types of jobs, so I should just instantly be hired then, right? And it's like, no. You now have to go find a job. Once you found a job, you then have to convince the person that they should hire you and not one of the other 700 people who applied and one of the other 10 people that they interviewed, right? You know what I mean? Like, that's a completely different thing. So, there's a lot to it. If you're looking for like how this whole thing works, that's not something I can explain in like, a couple of minutes. I would recommend you get that course. I'm not applying for trade. I'm just saying, like, if you're looking for like a controlled sort of explanation of basically everything, in order with resources and, exploring every kind of step in great detail, I'd check out that course. That's my course. There's a link to it in the description box below. That's an option for you. Okay. Other than that, just learn how it's done. Now, if you have access to things like ChatGPT, which you should have since it's free, okay? Like, we were doing something earlier. This is I'm sure most people know this, but if you don't know this, okay, you go to chatgpt.com. I don't know if you can see that. So Okay. And it doesn't cost anything. You just start asking it questions like Google. But the thing is, it's extremely smart, and you can go on at length, and you could say, like, I'm not going to do it in real time, but what I found, by the way, is its real power is when you connect it to like the microphone, like this thing down here, right? And you ask it a question where you talk for like a minute and a half, and then it actually answers it, this very complicated multi-level question, and it gives you practical tips, and it connects you to resources and tells you exactly what to do or to say, right? Very powerful tool. So that can help you for like stuff like this, if you're just looking for sort of general advice. That's your friend, okay? You're wanting to learn how to do anything? Check that out. That's a great starting point for like everything, okay? And then if you want more than that, check out that course, okay? And then if you want more than that, and you've like learned a lot of the basic principles, okay? Then maybe hire a career coach. Just get one session with a career coach. It doesn't cost an arm and a leg, maybe help you work on your interviewing technique, give you some advice, what to work on, see if they can spot any red flags in how you're interviewing or something like that, or what's on your resume, things like that, right? They can help you. So between all of this, okay, you got help, okay? Different flavors for different things, right? At different stages. There's a lot to go on there. And that's just what I would recommend. There's a lot of other resources, there's a lot of other YouTubers and resources online. Okay, so just learn all you can, and that's what I'd say. If you want to do it with me and you want a comprehensive thing about how to do everything, check that out. That's the reason I created it. Okay, where did we leave off here? Deepanchu says, thank you for answering my questions. You're absolutely welcome, Deepanchu. I will follow your advice. Well, best of luck to you, You're doing the right thing. You're reaching out. You're trying to work on yourself. You keep doing that, you're going to be crushing it. Any tips to restart a career here? No tips other than learn how to do the hiring process, like how to do job search, right? I mean, that I'll leave it at that. Weir Whiskey says mental health issues were not mentioned, but that note about not mentioning freelance work is very disappointing. Yeah, I agree, Weir Whiskey, because you know what? You're awesome, and not everybody has the ability to go out and essentially do the entrepreneurship thing, which is what you were doing by doing freelance work. You're not relying on an employer as an agent. The employer is someone that assists you in turning your value into cash, because you don't know how to do that yourself. You have to go through an agent, an intermediary, right? That's what a lot of people do, that whenever they're working for an employer, right? They don't know how to turn their value into money directly, and so they work for someone who does it for them and takes a massive cut, right? You are one of the people that actually understands how to turn your value into cash directly. You don't need an employer. You don't need anyone's position. Bam, you can just make money, by having clients or customers, and they pay you for doing your thing, And that's an incredibly awesome skill. And I wholeheartedly encourage you to develop that part of yourself, Those are incredibly useful skills. You're also much more in tune with understanding the real world and how it works when you have the ability to do the entrepreneurship thing, right? So it's an awesome, awesome thing, okay? And I understand how that could be very painful, because you want to brag about this. You want to say, hey, I've done this and this and this and this. That's how capable I am. This shows you how resourceful I can be for you, But they don't hear that. They hear like, okay, you got your own thing going on the side. You're the type of person that, you don't want to just be loyal to an employer. You do your own stuff on the side. And therefore, we got to watch you, because if you're not entirely happy with your job with us, you're probably going to start doing your own things on the side. And if you had to choose between working for us or doing your own thing, you're always going to choose your own thing, hands down, if you make enough money. Which means that you're always at a perpetual risk of leaving, And it means that your energy is going to be split also between those, right? So look, everything happens some of the time, but that's generally how recruiters regard it. They are not entrepreneurship type people, generally speaking. And so that's how they regard it, right? They also have I've heard other people hold stupid opinions like, oh, you have to resort to doing that because no legitimate employer will hire you. It's like, are you insane? Absolutely not. Completely wrong. It's like, I could work for employers. I choose to do my own thing because I have first of all, I got the ability to do it. Not many people do, but more than that, I can do this, right? I'm independent. I'm capable. If ever there was a statement of how capable I am, it's this. So I understand your frustration, Weir Whiskey. It's really unfortunate. If using going back to school is not viable, especially as you graduate part of the gap, what then? Well, no, it is. It is viable. Like what I said is, you don't have to actually have done this. Just take a couple of free courses now, register for them, and then you can legitimately saying, I went back to school. Like it's not that I'm expecting you to go back to school for a year. I'm not. You just say, I got my degree, and that's great, but there's a lot of things going on right now about AI and like other things that they're happening right now that are like very important that, that I have an awareness of, and I have some skills there. That'll make me more employable and make me more valuable, more in tune to what's going on, and I felt that was something that's necessary. And so I wanted to learn about that. So go take, a couple of free classes on AI or whatever for a couple of days. And then you can legitimately say that. And that explains your work gap. You don't tell them that you were just doing it for 2 days. You just give that explanation. I wanted to do this, blah, blah, blah. It's technically correct, And the thing is, you're protecting yourself against them judging you unfairly. That's what this is about, You just want to be considered reasonably and fairly. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't judge you for saying this. But that will explain away the work gap, and it will also be technically true. So if that's what you're looking for, that's what I recommend. Khonshu, if I'm saying that right, says, embody and foster an atmosphere of mentorship and progression. What does that mean? That sounds like that's poetic. Poetic flavor of the month management jargon. Positive attitude to new ways of working for best outcomes. Sure. That sounds very pretty. I don't know what your point is. How would you answer those two questions? Well, that's not really a question, is it? Embody and foster an atmosphere of mentorship and progression? Yes, I do. That's what I would say. And positive attitude to new ways of working for best outcomes? Absolutely. That would be my answer to that. Weir Whiskey says, it's a current work gap for 2 years post-graduation. I'm sorry. I'm just replying in chat to your responses. No problem. Yeah, that's the imperfect nature of this, isn't it? But it's okay. It's all good, Weir Whiskey. Khonshu, maintain excellent working relationships. Sure. Stephanie, blessed by God. Hi, I've been in education for 25 years. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Stephanie. K-12 administration for 6 years. I have not been getting any interviews. I'm sorry to hear that. That sucks. Listen. Oh my God, where do I begin? It's hard to explain whole things when you're just given a couple of minutes, What might be a solution for you, like what it will be the solution for you, but to learn it is more of a question mark, is learning to go outside the system to the hidden job market, right? You know, I don't know what country you're in or what, you know, you said you're K to 12. Okay, fair enough. You know, but why do some people get picked for jobs like teacher, principal? It's, you know, the way that everyone else gets picked for jobs, it's based on networking, right? Now, the reason for that is because it's really based on trust. It's hard to trust a stranger, you know? That's why it's hard to break into things from the outside. So, if you go through the official hiring process where they post a job for a teacher, you apply, okay? And then you go down to, you go down to a job interview and you have to talk all about how you're a great teacher, right? You know, well, I have this education and this experience, you know, that kind of thing, right? But they don't know who you are. You know, for all they know, you could have falsified everything on your resume. This could all be a pack of lies. They don't know, right? You know, this is the problem. What they would prefer to do would be to take someone that they know internally and move them into the teaching job. If that internal person was qualified, you know, and they obviously know and like them, that person has proved their loyalty. They've proved that they're not insane. They've proved that they don't have any major personal problems or personality issues. They've proven that they are professional, that they can represent the school well, and they can behave in a very proper way that is expected of a teacher. They've already shown and demonstrated all those things, right? So if now they've finally gotten the education, now they're qualified, you would want to move that person into the teaching role. From an employment, from an HR perspective, that candidate would be much less risky than hiring a stranger that you don't know, you know, and then giving them a teacher role, you know, right? And it works that way for every position in every industry, right? Now, the good news is that most people don't get hired by posted jobs, even in government, if that's where you're working, you know, in K through 12, I'm assuming is part of like a public school, like it's owned by the government. You know, they hire a lot of people from networking by going around the official system. So the idea is that, you know, if you met, I'm assuming that the principal will be the one who has final say in which candidate gets hired as a teacher in that school, okay? Now, if it really comes down to what the principal says, they're the hiring manager, they're in all the job interviews, and they make the final decision, right? With advice from others, but the buck stops with them, right? If you know the principal, if you've met the principal, you've had conversations with the principal, they know who you are, and they like you, and they think highly of you, right? You know, if you were in that situation, and you had mentioned to the principal, listen, you know, like, I'm looking to get into teaching again, actually, you know? Yeah, I was a teacher before, and, you know, I'm fully qualified, but, you know, for whatever reason, I'm not a teacher now, but I'm looking to get back into it. You know, I was wondering, you know, if ever, I just want you to know, if there's a position at your school, you know, let me know, because I'd love to work at that school, you know? That's all. Right? And like, you know, the person, you're like almost friends, they respect you, right? That carries a lot of weight, right? Now, yes, you have to go through the official hiring process. Other people then have to sign off on you. But the difference is that the principal is championing you. They're the one that's really driving the process, and they want to hire you, you know? Sometimes, and this is what happens in the private sector, sometimes, or usually in the private sector, they won't embark on an official, full-blown job search campaign if they've got you who's fully qualified, they know you, they trust you, and they'd like to hire you. What would be the logic in like looking further afield if they've already got a perfectly fine candidate right here that they want to work with, they trust, and they know, right? You know, so like, I'm setting all this up to explain like how humans behave, right? You know, so imagine if you could reach out to the principals of many schools, all the schools around you, right? You could meet these people, you could talk to them, you could ask them questions. There's many ways to do this. There's many legitimate ways to do this. You don't have to be some kind of raging extrovert, right? Now, what I did when I built my consulting business is I did that. I did a form of that. It's basically direct outreach, where you find, what are the schools around you, or any employer that could hire a teacher for that matter. You find the individual within those organizations that's, the person to talk to, right? They're the principal, they're the owner, they're the senior manager, whatever, right? And you talk to them and you say, like, listen, I got a couple of questions. I'd love to get your expert opinion on this or that. Would you be able to spare me 30 minutes of your time? Is that something you can do? Right now, a lot of people will say no, or they won't respond. But some people say yes. They'll say, sure, yeah, come on down. I'll give you some time. So you go down there, you talk to them, you meet them, you talk to them, you have a very pleasant conversation. You ask them about them. How did you guys do this? What do you think is the way forward? What do you think is coming down the pike for education? What are going to be the new challenges? And how is education going to have to respond in a changing world with new technology and new social issues? And you talk to them about it, and you get along, and they like the cut of your jib because you're talking a lot of sense, and you guys kind of bond over that. And it was a very pleasant conversation. At the end of it, they're kind of sad that it's over. They said, I had a really interesting time talking to you. That was actually pretty good. You go away for a week or so, you send them a note, you say, listen, I've been thinking about, some of the stuff you said. And, that sounds really cool. And I just want you to know, I'm actually, thinking of getting back into this. If ever you have an employment opportunity with you guys in that capacity, let me know, right? Now you do that kind of thing. There's many ways of doing it. And all of a sudden, many more jobs open up for you. There's a lot of more opportunities than what's posted, okay? So that's kind of like the hidden job market. Just for people who don't know, that's the hidden job market. 80% of jobs that exist are in the hidden job market. All the jobs you see posted, that's only 20% of all the jobs that are actually out there, right? Okay? Why is that? It's because those other jobs, they get filled before they need to be posted, right? You don't need to hire strangers if you've got other people lined up that you want to work with, right? That person could be you. It's just a matter of reaching out. Introverts can do this online. Extroverts like to go to events and they like to do stuff in person. That's fine. They can do that too. There's many, many ways of doing it. Okay. So there's also that, in addition to the whole conventional stuff you hear from recruiters, because recruiters deal with posted jobs pretty much exclusively, right? They know about posted jobs. You talk to them about posted jobs. It's not rocket science. I used to teach recruiters. But for all the other stuff out there, they're usually not the people to talk to because they don't deal with that stuff. The hidden job market goes around what they do. They're not an active part of it. So there's many things out there. There's many ways of doing this. Okay? So there's a lot of avenues for you to go down and for you to learn about. If you want to do that with me, I put all that stuff in this course, okay? If you want something for free that kind of talks a bit about it, I've got some resources in the description box of this video. There's two videos in particular. One's called The Hidden Job Market. The other one's called How Successful People Get Jobs. Check out that video, okay? It might be a little boring, but I feel like I'm giving away absolute pearls here. I know I am. It's just that it's not a very sexy video that, is very action-packed. But, check that out. And I have a playlist on it's posted on my YouTube channel page. So if you go to the Company's Expert, there's a playlist called How to Tap the Hidden Job Market, where I talk about the hidden job market. But there's a lot of stuff out there. And if I were you, I would be pursuing all of these. Go head to head with all the other applicants when you apply for the posted jobs, but also go around it, And the reason why you get hired on the hidden job market is not because you're the most experienced or qualified teacher out there. It's because you're the only one that showed up and they like you. And of course, you're qualified, so that's why they gave you the job. Okay, not getting any interviews. Those are from the job description, TV sound supervisor. Do you have any? Okay, so are you guys, I guess it sounds like you guys are all talking amongst yourself here. John Bostony says, had a final quick phone call interview on Friday after having the in-person interview. Emailed them Monday morning. I've yet to hear back. What should I do in this instance? You should get on with your life, John Bostony. Keep moving. I mean that in a good way. Don't sit by the phone thinking to yourself, oh my God, what can these people be doing? What's going on with them? And then you sit and you wait and you get disappointed because the phone's not ringing. What you do is you move forward. You're always moving forward. If these people call and they want to talk to you, great. I hope it works out. But you're not going to waste any more time and stress worrying about these people. Now you're moving forward. Okay? If you've sent a thank you message for the interview and then you had a phone call or you're waiting for a phone call or whatever it is, you emailed them, you have yet to hear back. Like what I would do is I would, because you did do an interview with them, it is worth trying to follow up. Now, if you emailed them, just so you know, email is like the worst way to communicate. It's the easiest thing to ignore, and people do, right? What I would do is I'd try one other thing. I would try calling the person you dealt with, okay? If you're the type of person that is absolutely scared as hell to pick up a phone, do it like in the evening or something, you know, like where you can leave a voicemail and they'll get it the next morning, right? But do that. Now, once you've done that, you're done, okay? Like you're not gonna waste any more of your time on these people. If they have a need to talk to you again, they'll call. They'll let you know. Okay, you move on. Keep focused on the next opportunity. Okay, you got this iron in the fire. Now you move on. Get some more irons in the fire, some more leads, and you will come out on top. Okay. Stephanie, blessed by God, I know, but I'm trying to relocate to a different state, so yes, it's challenging. Yeah, okay, yes, it is challenging. I understand. I sympathize. It doesn't change anything I said if that's what you're talking about. I'm not sure if you're talking to me or you're talking to somebody else here. I'm an assistant superintendent of curriculum and instruction. I'm not trying to teach again. I'm trying to get a higher job. Well, look, okay, everything I said applies to whatever job you're going for, okay? And if you're an assistant superintendent, then you'll know at that level that this stuff is important, right? I mean, if you're looking to be a superintendent, you know, the higher you go, the rarer it is people hire people that they don't know. You know what I mean? It's too important. People at the bottom, you hire people you don't know because, hey, if someone doesn't work out, you replace them and that's that. You know, but some people at a very high level, if they mess up, it's damaging, very damaging, you know? So you generally don't hire people you don't know. That means you don't go through the standard employment process. You go through networking. So all the more power. Now you can do the networking remotely. If you're not in that city, you can still use LinkedIn. You can find all your searches to that region or that city, whatever, and then you go about it that way, you know? Andrew says, any advice on one-way interviews? I just watched the Pass the Interview playlist. What's that? Like, are you talking? It's nothing of mine. I don't have a Pass the Interview playlist. I have a How to Get Hired playlist. I'm not sure if you're referring to that. I don't know what one-way interviews are. Is that this new thing where, like, they want you to record yourself in front of a camera, essentially record a video, and then you send the video to them? Yeah, they're trying to get those to catch on, but they're really approaching the limit of what people are willing to do. You know, the entire reason they want to do those, if that's what you're asking about, is because they can make a decision within the first 2 minutes of whether they like you or not. And then if they don't like you, they just don't watch any of the other videos you recorded, right? You know, it's beautiful. It's even more dehumanizing than what we have now. Good afternoon to Helicopter. John Bossany says, yes, Brian, that is what a one-way interview is. Okay. Okay, I don't know who John Bossany is talking to. Yeah, it's a video with no one interviewing me. Yeah, in all honesty, I wouldn't waste your time with that stuff. I mean, there's so many other things out there other than having to resort to this crap. It really feels like, it's like a bottom feeding, There are a lot of legitimate jobs out there that you can get. You can get some amazing stuff, And there's a lot of jobs that I was just describing that you get the job, not because you give a great interview talking about how great you are, right? Using all the buzzwords and all the stupid little techniques. You get the job by talking to the hiring manager, the person who actually knows the job, not the recruiter, the hiring manager. And you get the job because, you're halfway decent, you're halfway qualified. But you know why you get it? You get it because you're the only one that showed up. That's why you get it. That's more effective than the alternative, which is this kind of crap, which is applying for a posted job where you're going in with 800 candidates and what they're trying to do is they're trying to put you on a level playing field, all 800 candidates, all 800 applications. And you're going to try and elevate yourself above the crowd in a group of 800. Okay? Now tell me, which one sounds more promising? Going up against 800 people and beating them hands down? Or getting the job because you're the only one that showed up? And it so happens that they like you, you're a decent person, you're pretty much qualified, you can do the job. But most importantly, you get along with the hiring manager who would be your boss, right? That's why they hire you. That's the way most companies hire. And it's damn effective. I can tell you from running a company, it's damn effective. The only reason in my experience, I know this isn't the whole story, but the only reason that I ever encountered like recruiters was the reason that the hiring manager has their own job to do and they can't afford to now start hiring people. Hiring people means you got to write job descriptions. You've got to micromanage the hiring process. You've got to train the recruiter on what you're looking for. What are the qualifications for this? What should they have? Where you draw the line between what's acceptable and what's too little. You have to sit in rounds and rounds of job interviews. You have to read resumes. This isn't your job. You're a manager. You already are quite busy doing your job and the pressure's on. And then you have to tack this on, That's why you slough that onto an HR organization, either an external one or the internal HR people. You just fawn it off to them and say here, you come back to me with your top 3 candidates that you recommend for this role, and I'll make a decision between the final 3. But you do all the work for me, right? Which one's more effective? In the end, it was a tie. But this way, at least the hiring manager, it allows for hiring the people that spontaneously just show interest and strike you as amazing. So anyway, learn about this. Look under every stone. So look in the posted job market, look in the hidden job market. There's many places you could look. Do it all, and you can get hired pretty quickly. Andrew Bader says, I'm applying for Dell Next Gen Training Sales. Okay. Well, that seems good. I wish you the best of luck with that, Andrew. Thank you for being here. If you have a question, let me know. We have come down to the end of the chat, it seems. It's been an hour and a half. There's 34 people here. Thank you for being here. Hopefully you're getting something out of this. I know I tend to go off on rants and tangents and things, It's just because, like, in this space, there's so many incompetent recruiters out there that, some of it's malicious, some of it's just excusable. A lot of them are overworked, so fair enough, but there are quite a few just totally incompetent or just nasty people out there. The communication is terrible. And something I've always wondered across the board is, like, if you're running an organization, you're expecting the sales department to represent the organization well. You're expecting the customer service department to represent the organization well. You're expecting all your executives, and spokespeople and people in the PR department, certainly, to represent the organization well. But for some reason, the HR department is a blind spot. Yes, HR generally deals with employees. That's their whole point. So it's internal. But when they're hiring, they're connecting with external people. And it's a blind spot for a lot of organizations. They're doing a terrible job of communicating, making a good impression, representing their organization well. They ghost people, they mislead people. They do a lot of seemingly illogical things. They use a lot of cryptic communication, like saying, I'll get back to you, which means, of course, I'll never get back to you. Things like that. A lot of young people don't understand that, They think you mean it literally, and you know what I mean? So it's fascinating to me how HR, like recruitment and selection, is a blind spot for a lot of organizations, in how to communicate externally to the public. Okay, Wampa, I guess, is asking the final question here. Let's see. How to justify holding 2 part-time jobs at the same time in the past at an interview? Do you have to justify that? Like, is that something you need to justify? I don't think you have to justify that. You can explain it if they ask. You'd say, like, well, I took this job and, it was like this many hours, like, I don't know, 10 hours a week or something. That's good. I enjoyed it, but obviously I had more capacity and I needed, it wasn't enough to live on. So, I got a second part-time job out of necessity, and I worked here, and that worked out really well too. I enjoyed both, and I worked at both, and both employers were aware of the other. They were aware that I was part-time and I was working somewhere else, and it was all above board, and there were no issues, no conflicts. And that lasted for this amount of time, and I don't know whether I would do that again, probably not, but but that is what I did in this situation in the past. Something like that. I don't think it needs to be justified. You just explain, that that's what I did, and there wasn't any problem. Nobody had any issues. It didn't cause any conflict or any other issues. Andrew says, what qualities or traits make candidates stand out in your interviews beyond just having the right skills on paper? I don't do job interviews with like low-level, like worker types. And I certainly don't go through this process. What they do at higher levels is it's much more unstructured. You have lots of conversations over many hours, over dinners, over lunches, and things like this. And you get to know the person. And the thing, the sort of idiot's guide to doing a job interview is you plonk their resume down in front of you and you start asking them, like, oh, I see you have this. What's the deal with that? Why did you go from this to that? Or why did you take that job especially? Or whatever, asking about their motivations, their approach. That's how they kind of do it more at a high level. You get to know the person. You also kind of are aware of their track record because presumably in the vast majority of cases, you are aware, you know of them. You know what I mean? But for low-level stuff, you're asking what makes you stand out. Here's the answer. When you say stand out, it doesn't mean what you think it means. We hear stand out and we think memorable, okay? You want to stand out? You want to do something truly memorable? Show up drunk with no pants, throw up all over the table, and insult everyone in the room before storming out. That'll be memorable, okay? But that won't get you the job. The way you get the job is you're the person that fits the requirements more than any other, okay? If you're talking to a recruiter, that's what matters to them. Recruiters exist to find candidates that meet a list of requirements. That's their whole job. They don't write the requirements. That's given to them by somebody else. If it's internal to the company, it's given to them by the hiring manager. If it's external to the company and they're like, a contractor that shows up and does recruitment and selection work, it's given to them by a client, okay? So the client says, I need someone who's got this. Go out and find me some candidates that have those things. These are what are absolutely required. These are nice to have, okay? Go out and find me some candidates like that. I want to meet them and I want to interview them. And you can make recommendations on what you say, but that's what I want you to do for me. And the recruiter is a grunt. The recruiter goes out and follows orders and finds some candidates that have that list of requirements. That's what they do. So they care about requirements. So if you want to pass an interview that's run by a recruiter, you have to meet requirements. That's what it's about. It's not about what you can bring to the role. It's not about how great you get along with them. It's about how closely you meet the requirements that they were given from their boss, okay, by their boss. And that's what tends to pass an interview with a recruiter, okay? If you're talking to a hiring manager, it's different. They don't care so much about requirements. They care more about whether they like you, okay? By the time you usually get to talking to a hiring manager, at least in the official process, on paper, you're qualified. So you're qualified to do the job. You could do the job if they gave you the job. You have at least the bare minimum skills. If you're doing an interview with the hiring manager, the number one thing they care about is, do you and them get along? Do you see eye to eye? Do you click as people? Because if you get hired, you're going to be working with them every day. And you're going to need to communicate both ways. You're going to need to interact. They want someone that understands what they want and just is okay with it. They don't want someone that's going to give them an argument. They just want someone that can just go and just say, yes, sir, or yes, ma'am, and go take care of it. So that's how you pass these things, right? In a nutshell. That's what people are looking for. You're welcome, Wampa. Andrew, show up drunk. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, you want to be memorable. They're not going to forget that in a hurry. Do the exploding tie bit, right? You could have the squirting tie. If you wear a tie. And you could either have the squirting tie or the exploding tie, whichever one you think would be more memorable and would stand out, okay? I vote for the exploding tie. If you've never heard of this thing, it's just like a real tie except it explodes, okay? So get one of those and try it out and let me know how it goes, and we'll talk about it afterwards, Eric Larson says, I'm curious, what is your opinion, I guess, on high cognitive assessment where you have 12 minutes to answer 50 questions? I don't know what it is, but I already kind of feel that it's absolute garbage. Why would... I guess it's living proof that education has failed. Why would you need to do this? If you have educational qualifications that are presumably required and they mean something, this would be unnecessary. I guess it's a signal that they don't trust educational credentials. Either that's the fault of them being paranoid or it's the fault of education for being useless, but this should not be required. Right? Oh, and every so often, the expression is flavor of the month. I don't think it happens every month for me, but every couple of months, I hear about a new test, whether it's a technical evaluation or psychometrics. They come and they go. They don't do any good. Companies promote them. and they get private companies and employers to buy in to it. But none have really lasted so far. Just like theories in psychology, a lot of them have their time in the sun and then they fall from favor. So like if it's a very specific industry, like industry specific thing, and it evaluates you for a very specific technical role, and it's like a gold standard in assessing you for having the skills to function in that role. Fair enough, but I've never heard of it. So who knows? Andrew says, my interview today should be interesting. I'm not sure I'll be watching my interview since it's run by AI. Oh yeah. Yeah. That gives you a real warm, fuzzy feeling about it, right? Don't be sorry, Eric. You're awesome. You're awesome. And you're going to knock it out of the park. You deserve, like this test or whatever they're making you do, I assume, just do your best and don't sweat it. Like, think of it this way, okay? You know how maybe you've done this in school where they make you do group work, and maybe they don't assign the groups, like the teams. They let you decide, okay, who do you want to work with? You find 3 other people and then, let us know who's in your group, and then, we can register it, right? Like that's a really scaled down version of like hiring somebody, right? Like, I need help to do this work. There's too much work for just me. And there's a sort of division of labor here, and I need someone to do this, right? And you, are wanting something from me, whether it's money, whether it's recognition, or, whatever, letter of recommendation, whatever it is, I got to pick someone. Now, if I pick the wrong person, they're going to do a terrible job, and it's going to affect me because like I'm in this group and I'm being evaluated based on the group work, what work the group has done. So how do you evaluate people, right? Now, there are some people out there that would say, they believe that the way to properly evaluate somebody is to give them a questionnaire, and say that would be the best way to choose the right people to be on my team, right? That also is contingent upon people having the patience to take your questionnaire without feeling it's degrading or an excessive amount of work. They might not even really be sold on wanting to be in your group specifically anyway, You know what I mean? Maybe all the other people pair off and you're left with the last 3 people that couldn't be picked for any other group. And so you say, well, in order to work with me, you're going to need to do this questionnaire. So they're kind of like, whatever, they just do it. And then I don't know what the questionnaire reveals, but then you're working with them. You know what I mean? Like, it's like the job search process in microcosm, right? A lot of times, if you're just trying to assess somebody's suitability, that's usually not the best way to do it. It might be a component of it, possibly, but it's certainly not the be-all, end-all. Helicopter. I had an interview today and it went really well. Well, that's good. Congratulations, Helicopter. Way to go. However, they really want me to take a personality test to see if I fit in with the culture. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's because they're idiots. It's also kind of a sore spot for me because, about 20, 30, 40 years ago, they used to believe in the Myers-Briggs type indicator. And that was like the only real personality type test that was somewhat well regarded by HR as a whole, right? And that has fallen from favor about 10 years ago, and they don't really go on about it as much. But it's stupid because what they did was they took the Myers-Briggs indicator, which is actually a pretty damn useful thing. I worked for a company once. I made everyone in the company take it and, all this kind of stuff. And I'd seen it like work, because it wasn't really that sophisticated. It was saying like, are you an introvert or an extrovert? Do you enjoy doing social interaction, or do you prefer to kind of do solo things like, watch TV, read books, play video games, Like you can say that. That's not like hocus pocus psychobabble. That's like a legitimate, measurable thing. You know what I mean? Do you make your decisions based on the facts or more the emotion, like the feeling? How does this feel? Does this feel right or not? You're getting a bad vibe, or some people make decisions based on that, and they turn out to be pretty prescient decisions. Other people, it's very fact-based, cold, calculated, let's look at the numbers, right? That also is a measurable thing. That's not some pie-in-the-sky psychobabble. That's something you can tell it's pretty straightforward way. So that was kind of the Myers-Briggs test. It was things like that. And then what they did is HR as a sort of industry tried to graft onto that a bunch of like psychobabble bullshit, to be honest with you. They tried to use it to say, oh, you will be better in this job than someone with a different personality. And it's like, nope, because it doesn't work like that. That's not what it was created for. It never made claims to do that. But a lot of recruiters and a lot of HR consulting companies started to claim that this thing could predict, based on your personality, whether you'd be good in a certain role. And it was this crap, So then they conclude, oh, this thing is useless, so it doesn't work. And it's like, well, no, it does work for its intended purpose. It just was never meant to try and predict whether someone's going to work in a job. That's a very high level thing. This is not that. This is just very basic things about how you think and how you behave, It's like the reality is that you are going to work with many different types of personalities. That's the challenge. If anyone wants to move into management, you want to manage people, that's the challenge, because everyone can get along perfectly with people who are exactly like you. You're an introvert, they're an introvert. You make decisions based on numbers, they make decisions based on numbers. You guys are going to get along great. You'll communicate really well. You'll hold a lot of the same opinions. It's going to work. Try getting along and interoperating with someone who's the opposite of you. That's where it takes people management skills. You know what I mean? That's where most people don't do such a good job, right? That's where you have to be taught how to interact with people and stuff like that, because it's not intuitive and it's not easy, So this personality stuff, it's all like, it is a legitimate thing, but they're using it incorrectly. They're trying to use it to escape from taking responsibility of making a judgment call on who they think is going to work out, right? That's the other political thing that they're doing. They don't want to take the responsibility if they made a bad call, so they can always say, well, hey, the test said they would be the best candidate. I just followed the test that everybody accepts, which they don't. So you can't blame me. That's the other political reason why they're doing stuff like this. Eric Larson, I had to complete such an assessment for a project coordinator role. Yeah, lovely. Tony says, what is the number one video you would have me watch to handle the interview with a hiring manager, since it involves how they like me or mesh with them? I don't know. I don't think I've ever made a video on that. They're going to be your boss, so it's important that you get along. There you go. That would be the whole video, really. Helicopter says, the funny part is that the job is fully remote. They would hardly interact with me. LOL. Now, Helicopter, the interview went well. They want the personality test. Yeah. Yeah, well, that, for what it's worth, I mean, I'm a bit cynical about this, as you guys can tell, but that reinforces my opinion about, like, they're doing it as a cover your ass kind of thing. It's not because they really need you to have a certain personality or something. You know what I mean? It's because they want to be able to say, if you don't work out, they want to be able to say, well, you can't blame us. The test said that they would be the right person for it. So, not my problem. Not my responsibility, right? That's the other reason why people involve so many people in the hiring process. Sometimes you go to companies and there's like 12 people in the interview. or you do 2 or 3 rounds of interviews, but it's like the same first interview over again, just with different people, you know? You get 2 people in the first interview, you're called back again, you're talking to 3 people in the second, all new, and then you're called back again to talk to 2 more people that you haven't met yet either, and you're doing like the same interview essentially over and over again. They're involving all these people. They don't need to be involved, you know? Do you report to like 7 people? No. You know, it's because they're spreading the responsibility around, so it's a decision by committee. So no one person is responsible if this choice turns out to be bad, right? It's these stupid little games. You know, that's what working in an organization is unfortunately it involves a lot of that, you know, and it's so transparent. Eric says, I appreciate your opinion, Bill. Thank you again. You're welcome, Eric. I'm sorry if I was a bit rough around the edges today. You know, but it is what it is. You know, you guys are here. You're doing self-improvement. I wish you all the luck in the world. I actually have to sign off now because I have another live stream scheduled like in 4 minutes on this channel. So I'm going to sign off and I'm going to come back just in a different live stream in the same place. So anyway, thank you for being here. I hope to see you again in 4 minutes. But if you want to go deeper, check out that course. That's where I put all my advice in one place. That's also where I talk about getting a job in the hidden job market. And it's tailored more for introverts. It's stuff over social networking as much as possible. It's the method I use to build up my consulting business. So that's stuff that I haven't actually shared on my YouTube channel, like in videos and stuff, because it's like monolithic. You know, there's a lot to it. So check out that course if you're interested. Also, maybe this one, if you just want to improve your communication skills, be seen as someone who should be promoted and you climb the ladder. You know, and yeah, thank you for being here. You guys are awesome. I will see you soon. Best of luck.